In this episode of the podcast, we're talking to George Varanakis. So George is one of the most influential people in the photography industry, and one where you might not have heard his name, but you definitely know the events and companies that he's helped create. So during WPPI's most formative years, George was one of the producers of the trade show and conference. He then moved on to CreativeLive, where he helped to recruit talent and educators from across the world in various industries, including photography, as well as other spaces. Then he went on with his business partners, Craig and Sue, to create Bryce Education, theportraitmasters.com, as well as the Portrait Masters Conference. His experiences are incredibly broad, and he's worked at a series of places that's constantly forced him to kind of learn how to pivot, how to move, how to shake, and how to get things done. I thought that experience would be very valuable to hear from on this episode, especially given the kind of, global economics and environment that we're living in. Let's go ahead and dive in. This is the TSS Podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid, simple truths that help us succeed in business, create better relationships, and lead more fulfilling lives. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. My friend, it has been a lot longer than I expected it would be since I've last seen you. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Been a while.
Dude. We've been kind of talking about catching up for quite a while. I feel like we keep saying let's catch up, and I was like, let's just do a podcast episode.
I like that. That's a great idea. That is a great idea. God, it just feels like we're almost a year anniversary, right? Of when this whole thing happened, when COVID happened, when lockdowns happened and everything. And it feels like it's been 5 years, but there's been
so much that has happened. Now, I wanted to kind of bring you on. I sort of wanted to center our conversation around, you've had your hands in so many different companies at a very high level and now at Portrait Masters. But Portrait Masters has been interesting just because of having to pivot during 2020. A huge part of your guys' business is that in-person conference, right?
Right.
So,
and, I remember it like yesterday. We were WPPI almost a little over a year ago. Last week was the year, and we had a big party. We rented out a bar and had all the vendors and speakers come, and we had a lot of momentum going towards our show because it takes a while to kind of ramp up where people go, oh, this is a great show. The word of mouth, vendors kind of have a little bit more confidence in what you're doing. And we were really lucky when we launched it that we did have a handful of vendors that kind of supported us. And then it just kind of got bigger and bigger as we grew. But, we're sitting there at a bar, everybody's excited about the next Portrait Masters. And then all of a sudden, boom. And, we're watching it March. We were, I'm not kidding, 24 hours away from launching ticket sales. So I think the lockdown happened on a Wednesday or Thursday, and Friday we were launching ticket sales, and we were sitting there going, do we launch it? Do we not? How does this all, what do we do? And then at the last minute, we're like, let's just pull it. And then we could always launch it later if, restrictions kind of pull back and everything. And then obviously that never happened. And so we had to pivot. So I probably spent 2 months on the phone with our team, with other people, talking to vendors, just trying to get a feel of like what the future is going to be like, and then pivoting to an online platform and making our show online. And ours, I think, was a little bit different than most in that we didn't go the traditional route of finding a trade show app that everybody's been using. We did our own. We created our own, and we basically took the platform of Bryce Education and moved it into more of a virtual trade show, if you will. So we learned so much in that time, not only like how to pivot and make this work for everybody, but to make it like a really great experience from the consumer side and also from the vendor side, but for both. And you want to do that for everything, but trying to navigate that in the environment that we were in was really hard because production was really tough. We had 3 instructors in Canada. We had 1 instructor in Japan, and they were all slated to come to the Portrait Masters 2020, and they couldn't, but we couldn't even get a production team out there to film their classes to do it online. So many things happened that we had to like pivot and figure out really fast. And it made, at the end of the day, it kind of made, we learned a lot. It made our show better, but we also like figured out production to do later down the line of how to like do in a easier, faster way, a more efficient way. So we just learned a ton about the whole thing.
Yeah, I want to dive into all of that in depth actually, but I want to rewind for just a second too. You are probably one of the most powerful people in the photography industry that I think most people don't really know about.
I don't know about that, but thank you. That's incredibly nice.
I mean, you are very well connected. You've been behind WPPI, behind CreativeLive, as well as Bryce Education, which you partnered with Sue as well as Craig, right? For Bryce Education.
Yes. Craig Swanson, who's the co-founder of CreativeLive, and then Aaron Anderson, who's our other partner. He's our COO, and he was one of the heads of production at CreativeLive. So all four of us kind of came together and created Bryce Education and the Portrait Masters.
Yeah, that's so crazy, because I don't think a lot of people know. You know, like I actually had Arlene on here not too long ago, and I was
Nice.
mentioning something similar. I was like, you and George's wealth of experiences are incredible, and it's something that I think a lot of people could learn much from. And yet mostly you guys have been behind the scenes on things.
Right.
So I thought it would be really exciting to kind of bring you on and talk about some of those experiences that you've had.
Oh, I mean, Arlene is way more powerful than I am. And she's the best. Our years working together at WPPI and at CreativeLive, we've had so much fun together. I mean, I think the theme, if you look at both Arlene and I, maybe our power is that it's relationship building. And
100%.
you know, Arlene, remember we would walk into WPPI and you know be during the show, and there'd be like after hour parties, and we try to jump in and say hi and leave. But you know, you couldn't go into a room with her without spending like an hour. And I was just wanting to go in, shake hands, kiss babies, and like, all right, we got the next one. And she would be like, oh, hi, how you doing? How's your goldfish? Like she knows everything about everybody. And it's awesome. But it's also really hard to move around at the show because she can't walk like 3 feet without someone, you know, talking to her and
sure.
catching up. And catching up for her is like 20 minutes. Like, how's your family? What's going on? Oh, your daughter, Becky, how's she doing? She's in college. Like she remembers all this stuff. I mean, that's her power, is that she knows everything. She's kind of like the mother of the industry in a way.
We all kind of say
everybody
that.
loves Arlene. Yeah. So I think that's kind of carried over for me too, just throughout my career, just building relationships, making sure that people trust you in the end of the day. And I think that's really helped us launch, you know, the Portrait Masters conference, because I had a lot of relationships with a lot of the vendors who trusted me from back in the day at WPPI, thinking, okay, they put on really good events. I trust you to not, you know, screw this up.
I mean, that's what to me is so interesting about what you do. And yes, I feel like you very likely had that already to begin with, but you definitely also learned from Arlene. The two of you are incredible when it comes to relationships and how many relationships you create and maintain. Like I get text messages from you every now and then. It's like, hey dude, how you doing? And like, I'm like, man, how does George remember to like just follow up and see, you know, like just keep in touch with people?
I actually genuinely want to know, like, because you're such a good guy. We've always gotten along. I always want to know what's going on in your world, because what you guys have built on your side is quite incredible. So I always like to bounce ideas off you. And we've had a couple really good lunches and stuff of just like, where's the industry going, and, you know, who's doing what. And I always love, you know, your insight on a lot of what's going on in the industry.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And likewise, but I feel like what makes you, as well as people like Arlene, so powerful is that you number one, you understand people and you have a lot of relationship with them. But in doing so, in knowing people, you also kind of understand socially and intrinsically what they want. What do they want from an event? What do they want from, you know, education? What are they looking for? And I think that's been like when Arlene was actually called back to WPPI from CreativeLive, I thought WPPI actually has a chance of surviving now. That was the
Oh,
first thing that popped in
yeah.
my head was they might actually pull this off now because she understands people, and you've done the same thing. It was very cool to watch you do it on the Bryce Education side because I saw you create you with Craig. You created Bryce Education, which was impressive in and of itself. But you also have the power, the star quality of Sue behind that, which is a huge factor. But when you parlayed that into the conference, that to me was incredible because conferences are difficult to do.
Oh, I mean, people have no idea. And I've seen a lot of people launch them
Yeah,
and they think, oh, we'll just put up a page, sell some tickets, have some speakers. There's so much that goes into it. There's, room blocks at hotels. And if you don't hit those room blocks, you got to pay
you
the
paying
hotel.
for them.
There's F&B, food and beverage minimums. You don't
Yeah.
hit those minimums, you got to pay the hotel. There's so many little things involved in creating a successful conference that I don't think people really know what goes into it. I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of hard work. And, we took that gamble the first time in 2017 with our first show, which was in Palm Springs. We did it at the Miramonte. And, you know, these are things that like you just don't anticipate, but they were redoing the hotel and it
Yeah.
wasn't done. Like I think we were starting on a Monday and we walked in on Friday for kind of pre-show to start getting ready and set up and it wasn't done. The
Oh
kitchen
man,
wasn't ready. There was no way for them to feed
the
400
hotel
people.
itself.
Yes. And so, you're always running around trying to figure out. And so they didn't have a kitchen open. We had to bring in food trucks. I mean, it was in September in Palm Springs, but it's not exactly, cold, but we didn't think it was going to be as hot as it was because a heat wave rolled through and it was
Oh
110 at
man.
night. We had like an outdoor
Oh
silent
man.
disco ready to go and we had to move it inside. So all these different things were happening and it's not easy to pull it off because there are curveballs coming at you left and right all day, all night, and you just have to figure out and try to make the best decisions possible to move forward and to be able to bring like an amazing event to people. And I'll hand it to our crew. Everything that we do, we try to do like 1,000%. There is
Yeah.
no like 999. It is 1,000%, and we want to bring like the most incredible experience to every attendee that comes to our show, but also every vendor that comes to the show. So they want to keep coming back, but also the attendees too. And so we had Platon, we've had some just incredible speakers. And I think when we set out to create the Portrait Masters, we looked at all the other shows in the industry and said, okay, I think we can do something a little different. And I think we can do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we set out to do. And it was funny. I'll give Sue all the credit in the world in terms of how the shooting bays ended up at our show.
Yeah.
So the first year we did it at the Miramonte, Sue, there were some heated discussions about shooting days at the show. And so we had about 10 of them set up and it was it was like at 5 o'clock every day. We had the shooting bays. We had 10 of them and it's 110 degrees. It's a heat wave in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
the models are just sweating. Everyone's
Drenched.
sweating, but the attendees loved it. They absolutely loved it. They were just eating it up and everybody else was just, sweating. And so Sue goes, we're moving these into the trade show. I think that's going to be a much better play. And I kind of thought it being like the old school traditional trade show guy. No, trade show, we've got Canon and da 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 da.
This
And
is what
she's
we
like,
are.
I think you got to switch it up a little bit. And,
For sure.
and it changed our show. It really did. I think it might change shows, in the photo industry moving forward because I think people want a little bit more than just walking into a trade show. They want to be able to shoot. They want to be able to interact. They want to be able to like take tips from, we had Peter Hurley and Michelle Salentano. We've got Brian Smith from Sony is at their booth. So like you're actually interacting with a lot of your favorite photographers right then and there. They're teaching you on the spot how to shoot. I just felt like that added another dimension to our show that it was hard to replicate for anybody else to kind of do that because no one had done it before. And then to replicate it the way we kind of set it up is kind of tough because we've got Oliphant backdrops. Every single one has like a $1,500 backdrop shooting bay. We've got amazing lights from a lot of our sponsors like Profoto and everybody. And then we've got all these icons helping you shoot right then and there. So we just thought that kind of added another level to our show.
100%. I'm going to be expecting an invite to come and teach at one of these.
By the
one of these
way,
booths.
you're always invited. VIP. Always.
No, that this comes back down to that relationship factor. The fact that you are on the ground level, you have so many relationships, you understand the people that are going to this and what they want. And I feel like that's exactly what people want at a trade show. There's only so much room for lectures, at a trade show when it comes down to like these platform classes. And essentially, if you're listening to this, like if you go to a trade show, doesn't matter what industry, they have these lectures that are usually in these big halls, and they're fairly kind of like static. You're either showing slides or maybe doing a demo on the stage, and it's very hands off. And to me, it feels like the world of online education has replaced the platform lecture for the most part.
For the better, too.
For the better.
think.
You get better quality education. You're upfront. You get to
Agreed.
see it. It's well edited. It's better. So when somebody goes to a trade show, I feel like there's once again, there's only so much of, sales pitches you can handle, like walking a trade show floor and seeing all the
Right.
I don't need to see. I mean, I remember one year at WPPI, I saw like 30 something album makers, and I was like, I don't need to see any more albums. You know what I mean?
I remember that was 2011, 2012. I think there were so many album companies back then. But there were a lot of album companies back then. A lot.
Yes, there's a lot, and we're getting to this place where, the age of information is over. The age of like we get it. There's so much information out there, and it's free to access. Right. And now we're getting to the place where we need a trade show to fall into the age of curation, where it's a limited number of things to do, and it's the best of the best things. And those booths were incredible, like to be able to go hands-on, to be able to see, Peter Hurley and your favorite photographers, work with them and engage with them. What were some of the other things that you found very successful with the early Portrait Masters conferences?
That's a great question. So the one thing that I love about our team that we have, and that's Aaron, Craig, and Sue, is that there's so many ideas that flow, and we're always trying to create, how do we make this better? How do we, take it to the next level? How do we improve the atmosphere and the environment to make this like the most amazing show on the world? And so, we were getting to the point where we had almost outgrown the Arizona Grand where we were in 18 and 19. So in 18, at the end of our show, I was like, we can't go bigger. And I had a lot of requests from the vendors going, hey, let's go big. Let's take this up. But I didn't want to, because we wanted to keep the kind of boutique feel of our show.
The experience changes.
Right. I mean, if we had 2,000 people running through there, it would be a completely different show. And so we really wanted to keep the integrity of the show and keep it smaller, 500 people. So we thought, okay, let's create a demo stage. And so the demo stage was a huge hit for us in 19. We live streamed, we created a stage, huge stage on the trade show floor. And we sold basically 20-minute slots to the vendors, and we live streamed it out to the world. And we had about 40,000 uniques tune in over 3 days. And it was kind of like QVC meets kind of I don't even know.
Creative QVC, basically.
Yeah, it was. And so we have this amazing production team, and they had overlays. And so you could click on it, and we partnered with B&H, and they were exclusive retailer. So you could literally be watching stuff and just click on a link, and boom, you had your camera, light, whatever you wanted in like less than a week, maybe even like the next day, depending on how you wanted to ship it. So we're always trying to innovate. And the thing that we didn't, in certain things pop up that you never think about. So we had about 50 chairs set up. So if people wanted to come check out the demos, they could, but this was mostly for people at home that the demo stage was created. But people were sitting there watching a demo from whomever, and they go, oh, this is great. They just went over to their booth and bought products right then and there, which we didn't, that really was the purpose of it, but it actually worked out really well. So things like that, like, okay, here's the idea. How do we like take the vendor experience per se? Because if you walk into a WPPI, Canon, Nikon, Sony, they all have stages. And this is kind of where the idea popped up, and they've got all their ambassadors up there talking. And so we thought, okay, let's take that experience, but live stream it out into the world. And it became an incredibly successful platform that we launched.
The other thing that I love about the demo stage versus the way a traditional conference is set up is that a traditional conference is this goes back to the information thing. A traditional conference is set up in overload. You have 10 different demo stages going on at the exact same time. Every single person has their own thing going on. And the person that is coming to the conference, they have to choose, do I go and shop for things? Do I pay attention to a demo? Do I go to a lecture? If I go and do any one of these things, how much else am I going to be missing out on? And so you always have this, no matter what you choose, there's always this sense of FOMO, because you go to a lecture and you come back and your friends are like, oh man, you should have seen, Lindsay Adler on stage at Canon. And you're like, I didn't know that was happening. And so I love the idea of a smaller conference, but specifically having one demo stage. This is the place.
Right. That's, and moving forward in future years, that's definitely going to be a big part of our show. And it worked out just so great because you could literally run deals and you could see the deal right there. And so we asked all the vendors, all right, pretend you're going to give these deals to everybody else too. Not only because everybody has kind of show specials. So we took the show specials and kind of blasted it out to everybody. So everybody can kind of take advantage of that. And then the other thing is we don't do breakout classes. It's one stage. That's it the whole time. 9 speakers. That's it. So we go in thinking, okay, we're going to find the 9 best speakers on the planet and we're going to bring them to Portrait Masters, but they're going to have to shoot live on stage. No PowerPoint kind of stuff. You're shooting with a model and you're going to be tethered and it's on. So and we just want to bring a different experience to it. And then the other thing that we did, which was a huge hit, we did Oprah moments. So our Oprah moments were at the beginning of as we started off each show each year, everybody, Sue would come out and we'd all kind of come out. Aaron and Craig would come out with her and we'd be like, all right, everybody, we've got a surprise for you. And then the first year we gave away a folio reveal box from Graphy. Everybody got one. The second year, we gave away a Stella light to everybody.
Oh, that's cool. Those are pricey.
It was crazy. And then the third year, we started running out of products that we kind of did there were some Westcott backdrops. There were all kinds of stuff that we kind of let everybody play after that. So it was really cool. And then we did it for our online conference too. Sue's got canvas backdrops that she sells for $100 in the TPM store. And we gave everybody that paid, everybody got one of those. So it's you're kind of giving back. We always want to and people go crazy. It's just that experiential kind of thing that we bring to the table that it's really hard to replicate anywhere else.
Well, I can't wait to come to the next one. Hopefully, for sure I want to be there. But hopefully I can actually work with you guys and be one of the educators if that works out. But
that'd be great.
Now my next question is, how do you translate that? Because I want to talk in just a moment about kind of your experiences that set you up for what you do now. But while we're on the topic of trade shows, what you've built is this really great in-person experience at the Portrait Masters conference. And how do you then go from pivoting that to an online experience?
That was again, going back to what I was saying before, having done that pivot and how do we bring that experience online? We did do the demo stage. So we filmed a lot of them at our studio. We rented Peter Hurley's studio in Chelsea, and we were supposed to go. And then all of a sudden New York went on full lockdown, where if we did go, we would have to be put on foreign. Oh, we good?
Would you be? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We'd be stuck there. And so we had to we hired a production team in New York. we zoomed in, our producer zoomed in, and we had a couple other Zooms going in, and we did it that way. And so we worked with the instructors
Man.
and the production team there to create not only, I think we did 3 or 4 demo stage presentations, but we did 3 or 4 talks from instructors, and then we did 2 of the shootouts. Now the shootouts were something, and again, it kind of goes back to like, let's create. What are we going to do to make this really cool? And one of the ideas was shootouts. So Profoto, Sony, and Canon were the 3 major sponsors. And they each got a shootout as part of their thing. And so each day would feature 4 photographers, same model. You pick the backdrop, you pick the lighting, and you've got 30 minutes, go. And so it was just like all these photographers coming in at just such different ways. Like for
That's so
Canon,
cool.
you had Laura Jade, you had Susan Stripling, and just their styles alone are so different. And so everybody just gets a different way to look at things. Peter Hurley was one of them. And Carl Ferguson, who was amazing, was also one of them. And it's just like everybody has their own style and everybody lights a little bit different. Everybody poses a little bit different. And so you could kind of take something from each one and go like, oh, I can use that. I can use that. Oh, that's great. I love how he or she does that. So the photo shoots, the shootouts were probably the best thing we did for on the online side. And that's something that can translate to the in-person side too. Like we'll probably do some sort of shootout, I'm sure, at the next Portrait Masters in person. But those shootouts every day really brought a different energy. And the other thing that was just so amazing, and again, you kind of stumble on stuff as you go because, the online conference world is brand new. Most people, people weren't doing these, before March 1st last year. So you're kind of like writing it as you go along. And so the one thing that we found that was really cool was that with our platform, it's just really a player in a chat box, but we had the instructors be in the chat room while their program was going. So they could answer questions and go back and forth with the audience. So we had like 1,500 people in the chat room and the instructor was just going back and forth. And I remember Carolyn Tran said to me after, she's like, I'm exhausted. That was crazy, but I loved it because they had that interactivity with the attendees that you just actually don't even get it the in-person one type of thing. You might have a crowd of people around you, but you're not going to be interacting with that many people. So
so their classes is basically pre-recorded, and then as it's playing, they're in the chat room answering questions. Is that how it worked?
Yeah. So everything we did was pre-recorded, except for Sue and Nikki Klosser were live introing each segment, kind of giving the audience, like teeing it up, letting them know what was coming next, who the instructor was, kind of thing. And it worked out great. And then we gave away a ton of prizes. It worked out really, really well. It was one of the best things I think that we've ever been a part of.
I feel like given you have Craig and yourself behind this, it's kind of the perfect team to figure out how to get this all to work, because that sounds like a logistical nightmare in terms of
it was crazy. And when it first happened, we said, all right, let's just go back to our natural instinct, which was we'll bring everybody in and we'll just do it live over 3 days, kind of like what we did in CreativeLive. And then again, with the restrictions and everything, people didn't feel comfortable flying. Like we had 3 instructors in Canada, like I said, 1 in Japan. Matthew Jordan Smith was in Japan. And so there was no way for them to get over or for us to get to them. And so what we did is we hired production crews in each of those cities, and they ended up shooting it for us.
Oh, wow.
And it worked out great. And, like you said, we brought it was edited well. It was lit well. It was just a different experience. And I thought it worked out so much better than if we would have done it live, figured out a way to do it live. It was just a better product, and it was a lot better product for the end user because they could keep it and watch it, go back and watch the shootouts and watch Tabitha Coffey's keynote, or watch Sue's keynote, or go back and watch the demo stage. So I think the product that we ended up creating was really, really good, and the consumers loved it. Our audience really, really loved it.
Yeah, it's incredibly unique because it feels like you're actually buying a piece of online education that is done live and in a community setting,
right?
As opposed to the online conference that I have seen over the past year, all of them, they leave a lot to be desired. I mean, most of them operate from the same standpoint as the live trade show lectures. It's just now you're doing it live and in front of somebody's, webcam or whatnot.
Right.
So the experience is, once again, it's just, I'd rather watch a YouTube video. I'd rather watch pretty much anything else. So to go and take this, it reminds me of CreativeLive, of kind of Craig's bread and butter, and yours too. You worked at CreativeLive as well, right?
Yeah, for 3 years. I went from WPPI to CreativeLive.
Yeah.
In 2012, and yeah, I mean, working with Craig and Aaron, and half our staff is from CreativeLive, old CreativeLive employees. A lot of our production team is from CreativeLive. It was such an amazing experience back then. Was this like family kind of like atmosphere where we were working 24/7, but we were creating this amazing product and everybody was loving it. And it was one of the best times in my career that I've ever had. I learned so much. And, Craig and I and Aaron and Sue kind of all got together and said, let's try something else.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, my time at CreativeLive was really amazing.
It was cool to see that you guys were actually able to do the online conference right. And it's cool to see that you guys have reshaped the in-person conference to be what it actually should be. I mean, if someone's going to show up, it really should be a hands-on experience as opposed to coming and watching somebody perform on a stage.
Right. And going back to what you said of like, so I did probably 10 different demos, like virtual trade show demos, which I'm sure you probably looked at a lot of them because there were a ton of them in our industry. And I think the one thing that we wanted to do, no matter what, I was like, I'm not doing a webcam show. I'm not doing a webcam conference. No way. Because I saw so many of them. And, so many of those platforms are clunky. They weren't ready for prime time yet. They kind of got thrown into the like, here you go. Now everybody has to do, every conference on the planet did an online virtual show last year.
And it was all the same thing. It was all the webcam based.
Right. And I'm sorry, but they just weren't good. I tuned into a lot of them, and I didn't think there were a lot of good ones. And so that was kind of the thing that kind of drove us every day. Like, we're not doing a webcam show. No way. Because you can do that anytime, and it's just like, you can't shoot. There's a lot of things you can't do. And it was really, the ones I saw, I was really frustrated with. And a lot of them broke down. I mean, how many did you watch that like buffered or it just absolutely just went down?
I honestly couldn't make it through more than like 10 minutes of each one of them. Like, it was, there was on the list of things that I wanted to do, that was so far down, like sitting there and listening to it. I'm like, I would rather watch a YouTube video. I'd rather listen to a podcast. I'd rather do so much other things than try and force the trade show concept into this online space.
Right.
So that was very unique. I remember you telling me about it, like, well, like I want to do this, but I don't want to do another. And we never really chatted since then. So I was very curious how it went.
That's true. You should have come up for it. But it was, that was the one thing that I just stressed to everybody. We're not doing a webcam show. Just can't.
I remember you saying that.
That was my pitch to everybody. We're not doing a webcam show. And, there were times where I was like, maybe we should be doing a webcam show, because you're dealing with like production teams in Canada and Japan and everywhere, in New York and everywhere else. And it was a high wire act. It was tough to put together. Our editors and production team were just so good, and they made the end product so amazing. But I just didn't want to settle for that. I just felt like you're settling, and I didn't want to be an avatar where you're walking down the halls of a trade show. Like, that's not cool. I'm sorry. It's just kind of lame. So
these ideas that people have sometimes, man, like, we can't be at the trade show, so let's make a virtual hallway to walk down. And you're like, is that what you thought a trade show was? Because like, I would rather, if you were to do it in person again, let's just teleport me to like wherever I need to go. That's not the piece that I'm there for, to be walking down the hall.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It thankfully, it all worked out really well for us. But there there were some times where I was like, maybe we should have done a webcam one. We should have got one of these crazy virtual trade show apps. But I'm so glad we didn't. And we learned so much. And I think we're going to take what we learned and apply it and do something similar this year, but not so much like an online conference per se, but an online product that has a lot of different things that we had in the conference package, not the whole conference package, but like we'll take some things and use it for something later down the line this year.
Do you think you'll be back to an in-person conference this year, or do you feel like it's going to be another year?
That's a great question. Man, I don't know. So today, as we're filming, I think Biden just came out and said that there should be enough vaccine for everybody by the end of May. Texas just got away with there's no mask mandate anymore and everything is open. Wow. So with that being said, I think there's a really good chance that we do have a shot to do something in September, October. And we are in contact with hotels currently right now and kind of monitoring it. And we haven't decided it one way or the other, but I do think there's a good chance. And if nothing else, we'll do some in-person type of events. But I do think there's a very, very good chance that we can do something towards like maybe early fall.
You got to tell me, man. I'm dying to block off my calendar to go to an in-person event. So like as soon as the dates are there, I'm signing up
to go. Itching. And I'm gonna be honest, like going to a lot of the shows over the last few years, I was just like, okay, I gotta go, and I've got meetings. But now I'm like, let's go. I'm fired up. I can't wait. I want to like.
We've all stayed home long enough to be like, I'm ready to see people again.
I know, but the other part of planning one of these things, and hopefully by the end of May, we're kind of getting out of this. But do people feel safe? Or are we all going to have to wear masks? We're all going to be socially distanced. I don't know, because I don't know what the future holds. But just based on those things that I just said, there's a good chance. So if that's the case, I would love to be able to put the Portrait Masters on this year.
I think it would explode. I mean, it's already a hugely successful thing, but I mean, I could imagine it selling out. If it's limited to 500 people, I could imagine it selling out within the first like 2 minutes.
I hope so. I'm gonna hold you to that. I really do, but it's just so hard to plan because you just don't know. And then, from a vendor perspective and booths and everything, shooting bays, corporately, are they going to be able to exhibit? Are some of these companies going to be able to send 10 to 15 people to your show? We don't know yet. There's a lot of unknowns.
If we're talking towards the end of, because this is usually in August, September. When is Portrait Masters usually?
We've always been the week or the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Is that, what day is that? Was that May? When is Labor Day?
What? The first week of September is usually when we're,
So
hopefully we get
I
to
kind of
that.
feel like, I mean, even if a large portion of the population has been vaccinated, maybe not everybody yet, that already diminishes the chance. Like, I feel like people are going to be bold enough and willing enough to get out by then. And I don't know that companies necessarily have a choice not to. It feels like it should be doable, but then that's just me speculating. So who knows?
I mean, that's all you can really do at this point, right? Is just kind of speculate. But I think there's a really good chance. After I heard that news today, I was like, okay, we have a shot to do this.
Yeah.
And once it happens, I mean, it's gonna be crazy, because I think, like you said, everybody is just pent up, ready to go.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So would it be fair? Because like I've looked at your career, and I always feel like if I were to give you a title, I don't know if this is what you would describe yourself as, but I kind of feel like you fall into the role of a producer. Like you are a high level producer and facilitator that makes things come together. Is that?
Sure, I guess. Yeah, I think that would work. I really
what would you describe?
That's very nice. I've just never really thought about it, like what my title would be. I think those that have been to WPPI, and the Portrait Masters would probably like chief drink ticket officer, where I always had drink tickets, like, hey, come to the party, getting people excited about whatever event we were doing. So yeah, producer, something like that. Yeah. I mean, I love it. I love the in-person. Like, I was kind of brought up with it at WPPI and kind of growing with that show and everything. And I absolutely I loved it. And I was there in the early days. Like, I started in 2003 when it was like, a couple thousand people, and it kind of grew and grew and grew and grew. And, by 2012, it was 16,000 people. And
that's crazy.
It
I
was
can't believe that's 18 years ago.
Crazy. Right.
Oh my gosh. So, I mean, that is I don't know what other, that is the role to me that you do, is you take all these different moving parts and you put them together to create a product. And that role, I have to say, is a very stressful one for most people. So what got you into that?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I don't know. I've always been, I think, since I'll give you an example. So I've always kind of been in these positions. I'm currently planning our 30th high school reunion.
This is not surprising.
Something that when I was running for class president at 17 years old was maybe not the greatest idea in the world. I didn't know 30 years later I'd have to plan these reunions and stuff, which is crazy. But I've always kind of been in that position. I've always really, really enjoyed it. And there's so much stress that comes with it, but there's also just a lot of excitement, and putting on events that people love is that's huge for me. I just love, it's like everybody coming over to your house, you're having a big dinner, you're having a cocktail party, and you want to make sure that every single one of those people had an amazing time. And I always try to take that into whatever that we plan. And so I try to, meet as many people as I can at our events and make sure they're having a great time. But I've had that in me forever.
That's
since
fascinating, because I don't give a shit if they have a good time.
I would be very offended if you didn't have a good time. So that is my job, to make sure everybody has fun and enjoys the show and, walks away with a really great experience that they go home and tell their families about or their friends about.
How interesting. I mean, it kind of makes sense going back to you're the class president, you're kind of, you gravitate towards these roles of putting together these events and getting people together. But I genuinely feel like for most people, that is a very stressful job. You have to truly be like you, where it's you like bringing people together and you like giving them these good experiences, because at the end of the day, that is what you are dealing, you deal with the stress to get to that place, basically.
Right. I do. And, it is hard sometimes because it weighs on you. It's on your shoulders all the time, of this pressure of making sure that you have an amazing event for everybody, but it also kind of raises the bar and makes sure you kind of you better shoot high and hit, kind of thing. So that's been something that's, maybe it's in my blood or something, I don't know, but I've always enjoyed being in that position and being able to have these events, whether they're online or not. I mean, we did it at CreativeLive with Photo Week and Photoshop Week, and kind of those same type of tentpole events where we were bringing everybody together online versus in person.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in line with your values, with who you are, in terms of, you are a people person, you create relationships, and you create events to bring those relationships and those people back together again. So it for sure falls into that. What were you doing specifically? I was always curious at WPBI, what were some of your specific roles? What were you?
Well, one year I broke up a fight on the trade show floor.
Wait, between who? Was it people we'd know?
It was two guys. I won't name names, but they're still in the industry, and they were on opposite sides of the booth. And one was really upset because one booth was having demos, and they were spilling out into the booth, or spilling out into the aisle. And the other one was like, "You're blocking my booth." And so they started sniping at each other. And thankfully I walked by when I did, because I was just kind of walking around making sure everything was okay. And all of a sudden it went whoom, and they were like this close and pushing each other, and it got really heated. And I had to get in the middle and be like, fellas, guys, it's just a trade show. We'll be all right. Keep your people over there. And yeah, I mean, I don't even know what my role was. Role was making sure that like at WPPI, it was definitely like making sure that like all the vendors were happy and making sure the attendees and the speakers were happy. That's kind of like your job, is just to make sure that like everything is running according to plan. There was one year where a Congo line broke out
in the trade show floor.
And also I wasn't even in the room. If you remember the MGM, there was 2 big rooms, right?
Yeah.
One room had like kind of the Nikons and Canons. The other one had more of the labs. Well, where the Nikons and Canons were, there was a certain album company that decided to do a Congo line, like with 200 people that went around the thing. And all of a sudden my phone started going crazy from a lot of the big manufacturers going, who let them do this? What's going on? So I had to like break up the Congo line. It was all these different things.
Why would it be a bad thing? What negative happens with it? See, this is where you and I differ.
People in the aisles, and like it just was mayhem. And so there were some other crazy stories too. One guy, this was when we were really growing, right? And one guy, he had sat down on a seat, but he kind of snuck in because you had to wait in line to get in some of the classes. And so he went through the back door, sat down, and just refused to get up. And there were like other people. And so all these people are shouting at him. And I remember they called one person, they called another person, they called me over. And this was when Skip was there. They finally got Skip involved, and we had to get security to literally lift him up. And he went absolutely ballistic, and to where like veins were popping out, and he just went boom.
Are you kidding?
He fainted, and we thought he might have had a heart attack or something. We didn't. It was wild. And then he didn't. He was stress induced. About 30 seconds, he popped up and he went right back at Skip. It just was like finger in the face, screaming, and he passed out again. The paramedics had to come. It was crazy. We had some wild stuff happen. But just in terms of like overall, go ahead.
No, I love, I was going to say this is where we differ, because I love jiu-jitsu and I'm a huge fan of MMA. So if I were to see 2 photographers get in each other's faces, I'd be like, let's see what happens. Let's see how they carry themselves. I would have a hard time getting in there to stop that. I'd be like,
right, guys, wait.
Well,
let's go. Let's let them fight.
Let's give this 5 minutes. Let's do 1 round.
Right. And go. So, yeah, just in terms of like, you want to make sure that everything that you thought and put into this goes according to plan. It never does, but at least you can get as close as you thought you could, kind of thing.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of a wedding planner to a nth degree. It's like you have all these different vendors, all these different moving parts, making sure that each one of these aligned, and then on the day of, just making sure that crap doesn't go wrong. So how long do you spend leading up to, like, how much time does it take leading up to one of these conferences? How much planning?
It's a good 6 months. Easy 6 months. But Sue will tell you that it probably starts the day after our show's over, and I'm pitching her ideas. I was like, we could do this. And she's like, please just give it a week. I don't really want to hear about this right now. We just went through, a week of not sleeping, being stressed 24/7. And, I'm popping up the day after going, all right, what if we do this? She's like, please just stop. But it's like I get an idea and I just have to tell someone. So I'm like, come on, let's brainstorm. She's like,
now she's your wife, so it's the best person to tell, because
exactly
business partners and wife, so that works.
Right, exactly. So it is a good 6 months, but quite honestly, it's 24/7. You're always thinking of like, oh, we could do this for the conference, or we could have this speaker, or what if we do this or this? So you're always thinking about it. If you're in it, you're always thinking about it. And that's I always feel like the key to anything, right? If you're in
Yeah,
it 1,000%, you can't turn it off. You're always going to be thinking of like different ideas. I guarantee you go to sleep every night thinking about whatever you got going in terms of what the next thing is for you guys. And
oh
you
for
wake
sure.
up and you go, oh man, I got an idea. This will work, kind of
Yeah,
thing. Or, I'm going to call the team and see like what they think. And so if you're in it 1,000%, you can't stop it. It's just, you can't.
no. There's my partner Yen. She will. I apparently have a look that happens over my eyes, and so she'll just. I'll be showering or something. She's like, "What you thinking about right now?" And I was like, "Oh, I was thinking about the book." And she's like, "Okay." I'll just be doing random things. Be like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like, "What is going on my face that like is telling you every single time that I'm thinking about these things?" Because every time she knows. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to record
That's
myself to see
funny. Sue does the
what's happening.
same. Don't do it. I know you got something going on in there. Just keep it just
Keep it to yourself.
just a week. Just a week. We just need a week of relaxation and not thinking about and talking about this incessantly. So that usually lasts about 24 hours. And I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. So
But that's what makes that's what makes you successful at this entire, putting together conferences, putting together these shows.
sure.
And I feel like it's the difference between, the shows that aren't good are generally the ones where people just throw something together. Hey, let's get 20 people and let's just do 30 minutes each and we'll just do it via webcam. And, that is the entire online show. And it was planned out in a couple days and it was thrown together and it shows like it comes through as opposed to actually putting together legit things.
Yeah. But I think that goes to anything you do in life. Like if you're gonna go, you do it and get into it and be passionate about it. I sound like Gary Vee all of a sudden, but it's very true. Like it really is. It's like if you put your heart into it, you can't stop. It's just
But
you're
unfortunately, I
always
feel
going to be
like
thinking of new things.
don't you feel like most people don't approach it from? I feel like most people approach it from the standpoint of there's money to be made here, so let's throw something together real quick.
Yes, and that's the worst attitude you could actually ever have.
Yeah,
It won't work that way. It never does. It
yeah,
never works that way.
but it's pervasive. I mean, if you see somebody doing online workshops and they're doing well at it, or if they're doing in-person workshops and they're doing well at it, the next thing you know is, 50 other photographers are following along. It's in the creative industry. It's in social media. It's everywhere. This person's doing well, on their Instagram account, so I'm going to follow along there. Instead of people choosing what fits with their values, and that's why I asked what brought you to this role, because it has to be something that fits with your values. To do it to the extent that you're doing for how long you've been doing it, it has to be something that ties to who you are at your core. Otherwise, you would have done it for a little bit, and moved on to the next thing. But that's how
Right.
people operate is they look at it, they go, there's a little bit of money to be had, and they go from one spot to the next, just bouncing. A little bit of money to be had
Yeah.
in each area.
I've been incredibly fortunate to work at places where not only surrounded by amazing people and great teams where you can bounce ideas like, had Arlene and Craig and everybody and Aaron and Sue and so many talented people around me. I've been very, very fortunate in my career to have those type of people that kind of complemented like my crazy ideas with their crazy ideas and all kind of putting it together. You had passionate people that really wanted to like put on amazing events. So I've just been one really fortunate to work with great people, but also in places where I really believed in the product. So
Yeah.
like when we were at CreativeLive, I believed in the product 1,000%. I thought we were growing so fast we didn't even know what to do. Like
Yeah.
it was like this perfect storm of right place, right time, right crew. Digital was just kind of like exploding and everybody kind of took, really got into it. If you look at 2007 and 8, which are our biggest years, I think we had some of our biggest years back then in a recession because a
Yeah.
lot of people, were laid off and decided to become photographers. And so you see these different waves throughout the industry over the years. But where I've been incredibly lucky is that we had WPPI, we built it, we had a great team, but we also like when I went to CreativeLive, we had this amazing product that we believed in. And then when we decided to do Bryce Education and the Portrait Masters and the conference. Everything is really, we've got great people, we've got a great product, just have something that we know people will enjoy. And that's kind of the biggest part of it, is like creating things that people will enjoy.
You've also spent your career getting used to pivoting and dealing with, constant challenges. I mean, from the challenges that you would face on a trade show floor to being at CreativeLive, where there was so many different pivots and directional changes, leading to the last one where they had to downsize and reduce scale to make the company profitable. Now, you were there. What was your specific role at CreativeLive? Were you one of the?
I was the GM of photo. I was the head of photo. So I basically like recruited all the instructors that came on. And then Arlene came on, and then I kind of became more of like the head of talent, where I was recruiting in other like channels that we had. And then I kind of went more into partnerships, and then I kind of came back to more of the photo side. And then Arlene, I think my last year there was 2015, and Arlene and I kind of worked together a lot in terms of like recruiting instructors, but also like, Photoshop week and photo week and all the different things that we did back then. That was really fun. I mean, that was kind of like an online conference before online conferences.
Yeah.
So we were kind of like ahead of the game. Cause you spoke I think you spoke at the one in 2014.
Yeah. It was such a cool.
I called you up. Yeah.
If you have,
it must not have been that good. You don't remember, but you did do it. So, all right, that's good.
No, I mean, that was such a special crew. I told Justin and Chris, I was like, this is, it was my best times were coming up to Seattle and actually hanging out with the CreativeLive crew. And it was such a fantastic time. You had already gone with Craig to create Bryce Education when they had their downsizing, right?
Correct. I was gone. I think that was probably 2 years later. I think it happened in 18, and I had left in 15. So I was a distant memory at that point.
Did anyone see that coming? Was that a thing that was,
I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't really know. It wouldn't be my place to say.
Yeah, it was it was crazy to see, because from the outside it looked like everything was going incredibly well and incredibly smoothly. I know that the production scopes and the budgets were probably, whenever you get funding for something, your eye is generally not on expenditures. Your eye is towards revenue and towards growth.
Right.
And so it happens to many, many companies where you kind of get down the road and you realize, okay, we've been spending too much money. We got to dial back. And I think they're figuring things out.
Every company that grows fast, it happens. You're growing so fast. You're like, we need to hire more. We need to do this. We need to do that. So it happens to everybody.
So what's next for you now at this point? Like, what's next for Bryce Education, for the conferences? We know that we're keeping our eye out to see if it's going to be in person or online this year.
There's that. For the Portrait Masters online, our store, we have probably 4 to 6 instructors that we've targeted that we'll probably start shooting here pretty soon and get those classes out over the next year. Bryce Education, it's still going to be kind of what we've done, and we've got some big things coming up that I can't really quite announce yet, but you'll see. It's going to be good. It's going to be really good.
Looking forward to it, man. Where do you feel like, if I can close on this one, where do you feel like the industry is going in terms of want, need? What do you see for us?
That is a great question. I think I'll be better equipped to answer that at the end of the year, just to see where it kind of like how this all falls out this year, and how much people really want to go back to shows, how this all kind of shakes out. But I think you'll see this is just my personal opinion, but I think you're going to see a lot more wedding photographers jump in, because there's going to be supply and demand, and there's going to be a lot of demand for weddings. And I think you're going to see more wedding photographers, not like the 2007 and 8, but I think you will see more wedding photographers coming in. But I think you've seen over the last probably 5 years that kind of shift, where it's definitely more portrait than it is wedding now, and it kind of flipped. But I don't see it changing all that much. It is interesting that there's, especially over the last probably 5 years, everybody's got their own kind of like village, if you will, right? It's like everybody's kind of broken off in their own little groups. And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully
What are some of those
those
groups that
groups
you
kind of
see? Like,
merge. I mean, I think if you look at what we've built, the community that we built, I think that's one. I think you look at some of the other platforms out there that have built, big platforms. You still have PPA, you still have WPPI, you still have Photo
gotcha.
Plus, and you have the communities around those. And there's some other ones. You guys have a great community. I mean, everybody is kind of building their own kind of community
Yeah,
now, and I
makes sense.
think, yeah. And so, are there events where we all kind of come together? Hopefully.
Yeah,
Um,
if you put
and
them on,
then if not,
because I'm not doing it.
and then if not, is everybody going to kind of have their own event? Does everybody kind of stay in their own little group? So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I think, wouldn't you agree? Like, I'm actually very curious to know where you see it going.
Yeah, I mean, on the actual shooting side, I do see, just like events, I think weddings are going to come back strong. I think that the supply is dwindling. I think a lot of people have decided to move on. People that were not truly the same people that I talked about earlier, the ones that weren't in the business in alignment with their values. They were doing it just to make money. I think those people
Right.
have moved on, and a lot of people moved on unwillingly because they just couldn't make the money over the last year in
Right.
the event space. So I think supply on that side is dwindling, and I think demand's going to come back really strong. And 2022 and 2023, I think, will be huge for wedding photography. I think
Agreed.
portraiture is kind of remained relatively constant through it. It's been the first area to come back because you're obviously working with one-on-one, but I think it's going to continue to just be a strong area overall. And then industry-wise, I do see I see the need for curation online. There's just so much now. There's so much content, so much information. I think that it's going to move towards, remember 10 years ago, I felt like the marketing points for selling a course was 30 hours and 200 exercise files and 25 PDFs. And
Yeah. That is very, very true.
I think we're well beyond that place now. And I think we're at a place where it's really going to be, I'm going to get you in and out in 4 hours. This is everything that you need to get going. Nothing more, nothing less. Go. And that kind of education will actually demand a higher price point than the Udemys of the world, which is just wade through the junk type thing.
Right. That's a very good point. I think you're right on.
Yeah, and then other than that,
And I think it's gonna be shorter too. I think you're gonna have a variety of different things. For some people, they love that 3-day type of workshop. We've got long form workshops, but we're also doing short form workshops they're 30 to 45 minutes. And I think it just depends on what you really like and how you learn. Personally, I like the shorter form. That's just how I prefer it, but other people like the long form and getting into it and just being immersed over, a couple of days and learning as much as you can. But you're right. There's a lot of online content out there. I would bet there's more online content in the photo industry than any other industry in the world.
Yes, 100%.
It's basically started in photo. A lot of it.
Yeah, because the equipment is already there. You got everything that you need to basically start filming it and to shoot with it. And so it makes complete sense. But the way that I see people online, I see people going towards efficiency. I want the biggest bang for my time. And it's no longer going to be the biggest bang for the buck. It's the biggest bang for my time. Mm-hmm. And then in person, I see it going the opposite way, where people want in-depth, hands-on experiences. So I think the 2-3 day classes, 2-3 day workshops are going to be very relevant in a high-dollar, in-person boutique experience. That's kind of the way that I
right on the head.
See it go.
You said it way better than I did. That was great. That was good.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on. I know you got to run, so.
I really appreciate it. This was great. I hope we get to do this again. Thank you for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. I had a blast.
Yeah. And in the meantime, for everybody that's listening or watching, in the show notes, we will have links to Bryce Education, Portrait Masters, everything. Y'all create incredible content. If you guys are just listening, then check out SueBryceEducation.com as well as theportraitmasters.com. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, brother. And
That is
then
correct.
that's it for now. So when you're actually in town, though, let's do a in-person one. Yeah, let's do a follow-up part 2.
I would love that. I would love that. All right. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. We'll chat soon.
See ya. All right. Take care, bud.